All right, welcome to another episode from the Chart Reader. So we'll take a look at Open, BBAI, RR, and then SOFI if I have time. Clearly, I was incorrect on Open, all right? So you know me, if you've watched my videos well, I like to be a lot louder on my mistakes than my good calls. And yeah, Open, I was very worried about the back-to-back-to-back-to-back dojis. I was worried about these lower indicators down here. We had red over green, red over green. We were just missing volume, the 50-day requirement. But hey, just like last time, we were just a little bit below the 20. We held it and we went. It kind of seems like we were just a little bit under the 20. We held it and let's see if it's going to go, right? So that's what we're basically looking for. You know, the cool thing is if you watch the last video, I basically said, hey, if this can get over 9, it should be good to go. We almost made a solid 10% run after that 9, right? We didn't quite get to 990. We didn't quite get to this line, but it did almost fill that channel, right? So over the moving averages, those two, let alone all 5, I mean, there's very much reason to be looking at this one tomorrow, to say the least, all right? When we look into BBAI and RR, look, I'm actually going to start with RR and then I'll tail back to BBAI. So my last video, RR was already over all 5 moving averages, and my thought really was this should do a little bit better because it is over all 5, right? When you look at BBAI, it down here it was still under them, and really this is the first good candle over it, right? So where I thought where I thought RR would do well right here because it was over them all, now I can actually start thinking about that when I'm thinking about BBAI, right? We are over all 5. That's finally a good candle. Just give me some confirmation and go, right? Very, very much tested this 772 line, right? Closed just a couple pennies under it. If you watched my last video, 777, my Las Vegas slot machine number, that's kind of the line I was looking for, and man, it struggled with 777. Look at it, the high of the day was really, it was 10 cents higher. It's actually higher than I thought it was. But yeah, look, again, RR did the job. BBAI seems to be setting up where it should be. SOFI, listen, I'm actually a little bit shocked that we came all the way down here, all right? I know there was a headline that we talked about. I think it might have been with, I don't remember who it was, but there was another lending provider that had earnings, and they basically said they were worried that their delinquency numbers were going up a lot. And when that happened, there was it probably was on this day, if I had to guess, because that's actually a significant volume right there. You can kind of see it generally doesn't go over the white line with SOFI, but there was worry that someone else's delinquencies might reflect with SOFI. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Sometimes you would think I like rehearse before. Dun, 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 dun. This. It was Upstart. Okay, so here's what it was. So there was concerns of their increase in delinquency rates. All right. And that's going to start to say, hey, maybe SoFi is going to have some delinquency rate concerns, right? They did issue a statement saying, no, we don't. It's all good. So I am a little surprised that it fell as much as it did. But look, the 50 is a very, very strong line. We actually have not touched the 50 since we broke it, right? We'll back up and look at the 50 a bit too. But interesting to see how it does right here. Interesting. Okay, I'm glad I zoomed down and look. All right, I got some thoughts about SoFi. I'll make sure I leave some time for it, all right? From there, I think the easy thing to talk about is how lovely the markets are, all right? As long as we are over the 8, let alone all 5, all I can do is think good thoughts, right? Like we have green over red on the MACD. We're still at a very, very healthy 67 on the daily. Again, we've been talking about the weekly being a little bit high, right? But yeah, I'm looking at the daily right now, and the daily is all right. So as long as I'm waiting for a louder signal until I can start thinking otherwise, right? S&P 500, pretty much identical. This one actually does have the green over red on both. And again, very, very healthy on the daily. Little bit high on the weekly, but again, we're focusing on the daily right now, right? Let's make these moves each day while we can, and then we'll watch as it healthy cools down, right? And then these are very much tech heavy stocks, but yeah, even the Dow Jones actually doesn't look that bad. And again, same lower indicators down here, right? So knowing that the Nasdaq and the S&P 500 both look good going in on the daily, it does make me feel a little more comfortable looking at all of these, which are tech heavy stocks, watch, right? So cool. Before we do go any further, though, and I give you more of my thoughts and opinions, what are we going to do? Same thing we always do, right? We'll take a look at the daily and the weekly to see how these things are setting up short term. We have our 5 moving averages. There are horizontal support and resistance lines that I do draw manually myself. And then when we are done up here, we'll use the MACD, RSI, and volume as our lower indicators. Hey, really quickly, if you can, please subscribe to this channel. Share this video online with your friends. Comment good or bad if you disagree. Look, anything you can do helps so much with these YouTube algorithms. But for real, just being here, giving me your time, oh, I'm so grateful for it, all right? So I think this is actually a perfect view to kick this off. And hey, one more time, I was for sure wrong on my last video, all right? I definitely don't want to say I was wrong about my 50-50 concerns, but clearly I was leaning on the bad side, and it did bring a good double-digit day, right? So I got no problem saying I was wrong right there, but I just at least want to highlight where my concerns were coming from, all right? And really, it started down here, all right? Open was this volume juggernaut that was just blowing out the door the average volume, right? I mean, this is obviously the biggest day, but on this day we were expecting 151 million shares. We got 1.9 billion shares, right? Like, it was just blowing volume out the water. And then all of a sudden, we started to come into this like week after week after week of just being really unable to hit that white line. That was actually my first point of concern. From there, look, the other two lower indicators that we have, green is good and red is bad, right? It's like a traffic signal, right? Green, you take off, red, you got to hit the brakes, right? We had red over green on both. And that little combo down here is really what was concerning me. Look, I say it all the time, right? We're live and die by the moving averages, live and die by the lines. And you know, I didn't really let myself live and die by the lines. Maybe I gave a little too much emphasis down here. You know, I'm just a human, right? I'm definitely here making mistakes and stuff like that. And it's that balance of looking. And it's also why sometimes I say, just because I say I move my stuff on the 1 and the 2, sometimes less is actually more. And this little simplified chart reader view that we look at, oh man, simple can be deadly at times, right? But let me go back to why I said this was a good view. Look, we've been here before, right? I'm going to zoom out even more. We have taken off and just lived well over the 8 moving average. We have taken off and just lived well over the 8 moving average. We then have to come down to the 20, right? Don't click anything. We then had to come down to the 20, right? We made a little baby bounce that couldn't do much. We made a little baby bounce that couldn't do much. We actually are living under the lines for about 4 days. Ironically, it was the same 4 days, which I think is a little extra ironic, and I have to chuckle at that. But, you know, we're under, but we never confirm. We're under, but we never confirm. And then, you know, lo and behold, it was that first... Well, let me take that back. This was a candle that got over it. We then really... Because watch. Oh, wow, it did. It got over the biggest candle to the left. I would have assumed it didn't, actually. Interesting. Nonetheless, it gets over, kind of lives on it, and takes off, right? So now we're trying to see what's about to happen, right? And really, like I said, in so many ways, this was almost identical, and I probably should have given more emphasis to the top than to the bottom, right? But yeah, I was in a very 50-50 place. I always say, I mean, not just me, it is a thing. This candle, this doji candle, is also just known as 50-50. So when you get back to back to back, it screams 50-50. But hey, look at where we're at now. Like I said, we're over the 8 and the 20. We actually almost tested our next resistance line up. We're in a really good place right here. Look, the bottom of this candle is basically the top of this candle, and it's basically 50% of this entire big candle, right? So I actually really like the fact that this thing closed nicely over that 904 range that you see me basically clicking on right there, right? So I think that's kind of what I'm looking for tomorrow. As long as we can stay over, let's call it 890, 880, right? That's roughly 50% candle today. What we're really looking for, I mean, really, I'm looking for this thing to break 990. because once you break 990, we're going to start talking about that 11 and 14 that we got above. We're basically going to finish off all of that little red, 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 right? I mean, this is the only little moment right here back in 2022 that lasted a couple months, and you can basically see it's giving us a decent resistance right here, right? So that's really what I'm looking for next. Break 990 is the goal for tomorrow. If it doesn't run, I would at least really like to see a close of 1030. I was clicking at 1050, and I would love 1050, and that's obviously a nicer number to say, but get me 1030, and it'll bring me at least over this candle right here on the 17th, and it'll get me over that resistance line right there. So I'm obviously liking the reset of the RSI, a very healthy 50. Wasn't that long ago that I was pushing into the 80s, let alone the 90s, right? So I think more than anything, just get me volume tomorrow, right? If we can get roughly 400, I'm clicking at 417. If I can get 417 million shares in a 7-hour day, we're looking for 60 million shares an hour. If we can get around 60 million shares an hour, it will be hard to stop open tomorrow. All right. Weekly RSI is a little bit high at the 81, but actually what I am seeing is this thing was at an 89, came down to a pretty healthy 79, still kind of living at that pretty healthy 79, and you can kind of see it also. It's been living relatively horizontally at this 83-ish RSI, and it's been going up the whole week, right? So I'm a little bit more flexible with this high weekly. I think as long as the volume can come, because again, we've seen it so many times, especially with open, volume heals all, right? So again, we're looking for basically 1050 to 1030 tomorrow. That's going to be our confirmation number. Let's not go below 880. And then obviously the last thing I want to do is go below that, but it feels like we shouldn't after this lovely candle from today. All right. So let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions, even if you disagree. Let's come take a, and I'm trying to decide if I'm going to chapter these together or kind of keep them separate. I think I'm probably going to keep them separate. So let's come talk about BBAI real quick. And again, like I said, this was a pretty nicely drawn line right here. To me, what I think the real battle on today was that $7.77. I can at least say towards the end of the day. Towards the end of the day, look at that, right? Like, let me just draw this line real quick. So the last 2 hours of trading was basically testing the line, testing the line, testing the line, and couldn't. So keep your eye on that 777, despite the fact that that is where my line is right now. But look, there's a lot to like right here on today's candle, right? We've been under and near, and like this thing can't decide what it wants to do in a lot of ways, right? We're basically kind of living right around the earnings candle, right before we did this gap down from the scariness, right? So it looked like it wanted to fly away from the earnings candle. It looked like it was going to come back down. It kind of stayed pretty much horizontal, and now it seems like we're starting to make good moves, right? And really what I liked about today the most was actually not up here. It was down here. I like the volume break of the 50, and I really like how steady it's been over the last couple days of trading right there, right? So this is starting to feel like the tide is turning. And like I said with RR, right, it was around here. So on 10-1, we were over all five. We had a nice little RSI in the 60s, and we had volume starting to peak over that 50 MA, right? When we're looking at BBAI right there, we were still under it, right? So it felt like the other one was going to go. But now that I'm looking right here, we're over all five. We're still in the nice little 60s on the RSI. We're basically nicely living on this 50, just starting to get over it. Give me that big volume tomorrow, right? Maybe the next day if it has to be, but we're what feels like a candle away from big volume. Really, the next thing I'm expecting is 820. All right, we should go for 820 tomorrow. And if we go for 820 tomorrow, that's probably going to be the signal that 980 is going to be next. All right, maybe there'll be a little bit of a resistance at like 880, but man, 820 is going to be a big number to break tomorrow. All right, I'm very bullish I'm extremely bullish as low as 750. I'm actually very bullish as low as 730. All right. I obviously don't want to lose the entirety of today's good green candle, right? But even if we're able to hold it, look, that's the top of that. That's the bottom of that candle right there. It's almost the bottom of that one right there. That's a decent support to hold. So I wouldn't mind that at all, right? But it does feel like if we can get the volume we need, we don't even need a lot more than today and all. If we got a lot more than today, I think we would smash 820 and actually take a test for 880 tomorrow, is really what I think. But if we only get like 160, 170 million shares, which is just a little bit more than today, that would do some significant stuff. So 170 million divided by 7, we're basically looking for 25 million shares per hour. We'll call 200 million our silly number. If we can get a little closer to 200 million, a little closer to 30 instead of 25 million shares per hour, oh, that's gonna make a big 10% difference in terms of gains, if I would say. All right. So again, what I'm really seeing is us trying to decide what's gonna happen with this earnings candle. Right. Obviously, the next day it dropped, and some would say that this is it, and we had a line for it back in the day, right? But right now, if we can get over this bad moment, we'll forget about it. It'll be in the past thoughts, and we'll wait for the next earnings to see what happens, right? But this is also starting to look pretty good down there in terms of the volume. So I'm gonna just put these together because I do want to keep. Let's not do that. Let's finish off BBAI strong. I will end it with saying this is also a nice weekly. Look, I don't know, again, I don't know the math behind these lines. I'm not pretending to be smarter than I am, but I have no idea why the RSI is going down like this while the MACD is going up. And clearly, price has been going up for the last month plus, right? So to me, I'm actually ignoring this. All right. I'm seeing a good positive MACD. I'm seeing a very, 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 very healthy number on the weekly. And I'm seeing us over all the moving averages. I clearly want a little bit of a better candle. But as I'm saying these words about the daily, it kind of makes me think there's a decent reason to think the weekly candle might want to close around here and possibly make it look like a strong one, right? It's still only Monday. We have a lot more days before this candle's done. So I'm liking the weekly, I'm liking the daily, I'm liking BBAI here. Let me know your thoughts, let me know your opinions, even if you disagree. Let's come into RR real quick, all right? And hey, RR has been doing solidly, all right? Get over all 5 and you fly, and that is what happened, right? I mean, going from 4 something to 6 something, that's a beautiful 50% right there, right? So 73 is also not that high of an RSI number. So there is reason to think there could be more here, all right? What's starting to become interesting, all right, as I zoom out, is where we're at in terms of previous history. Obviously, you can see it. Whole mess of nothing, right? We've never been in this channel since what, the beginning of 24. We're knocking on the door of almost 2 full years before we've ever been in this channel, right? So there's a lot to be said about just that, right? But what happens in between this? Nothing but green, 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 red, 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 and just nothing for 2 years, right? So this could be a very, very fast channel, right? It literally was only a 2 candle thing, a 2 candle window for it back in the day, right? So this is very, very, very fast trading potentially right there. I think there's a reason to think that 717 might be a little bit of a resistance, and I think that's worth keeping that number in the back pocket. But really, what I'm seeing is a doji because we are in no man's land, no woman's land for those girls watching, right? But yo, we don't know what to do. This is a very uncertain candle. We haven't been here in so long, right? Do we want to just fly on out of here, or do we not deserve to be up here and we should kind of head back down, right? So to me, I think that this doji candle does make a lot of sense, but I'm really liking that I'm really liking the MACD. I do like the green over red on the RSI, and you know me, I can't ring the alarm bell until 80, right? So there's actually room to go from 70 to 80, and we're basically at 70, and clearly volume starting to look nice. Yes, it's going down since the last candle, but I even as I zoom back to here, there's a decent steadiness to this growth right here, right? So RR, I think this is very, very much makes sense in terms of a doji. I think what also could be possible is us coming down to 624 and using this as a support. All right, this is a very hard resistance. Turning a resistance into a support and then bouncing off of it, that's a nice way to show dominance over that line, right? So really, I think there's more reason to think this is going to keep going up than down. I definitely don't want, okay, if we lose 624, we're going to come down to 575. I am actually bullish as low as 575. I am, right? Because we've seen this stock go above the 8, come down to the 8, and go back above it, right? Go up from the 8, come back down to it, and then go back above it, right? And both times it actually came close to the 20, but not necessarily hitting it, right? So maybe it'll repeat this pattern one more time, and maybe that's roughly where that 575 will be. But really, if this doji ends up being, oh, we got this 2-year channel, it actually might fly to 780 right there. All right. So let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions. Even if you disagree, let's wind it out with SOFI. And hey, I have to say it one more time. I am shocked we came down this hard. I'm actually shocked we went below this line. All right, and I'm going to talk about this line a little bit because if you remember the video I made, it was on this day right here, and oh my gosh, I'm surprised. No, it was this one right here. It was this one. Duh, sorry. I'm shocked. I am. I really, really am. Especially one more time. You look at the S&P 500 in that exact same window. It's been going up. You look at the NASDAQ in that exact same window, and it's been going up. Yeah, there was a little bit of a dip, but then it did go up, right? Even when you look at the Dow Jones, there was a little bit of a dip, but it definitely did go up, right? SOFI dipped and then didn't go up. It continued, right? So, it's just technicals aren't a guarantee. It's not perfect, right? I even asked right here what happened, right? This was on the 30th when it actually started to come down right here. This was the candle that was supposed to hold the 20 moving average and bounce up. Instead, it lost it and brought us down here, right? And I was right. It was the one with the most that volume right there. So what happened, right? That was the question, and this is basically the comment right here. All right. Upstart had an increase in delinquency rates. All right. And this had absolutely nothing to do with SOFI, but it seemed like a delayed reaction. All right. And you hear me say it all the time. Sectors do things in unison. It is what it is. You know what I mean? It's just because SOFI had absolutely nothing to do from it. The fear of a ticker in the sector will have a ripple effect. And I got to say it one more time. I'm shocked it rippled us all the way down to the 50, but I do think that this is going to go away, and that green, red should green itself, right? And really the first money line is going to be right here at 27.55. Get over 27.55. I'm going to expect 29 roughly. I'm clicking at 28.90, right? But from there it should be 29, and from there we should take off. But yeah, that's this. Let me know if you disagree with this, right? If you see that it was actually possibly something else, let me know. Hey, it thinks that the market is collapsing. I get it, right? The economy is collapsing, and personally I see it. Things are getting more expensive. Like I hear all the reports about actually delinquency rates. I hear people talk about credit card delinquencies are going up, mortgage delinquencies are going up, real estate mortgage delinquencies are at all-time highs right now. Commercial real estate is dying, right? I hear all that, right? But that doesn't mean it's hitting everyone and all that sort of stuff, right? And end of the day, as I look at S&P 500, as I look at NASDAQ, I'm looking at the ETFs, right? But all we're doing is going up and away from the 8 moving averages. And all we're doing is coming back down when things get really high and healthy cool offs, right? And as long as the market is telling me that's where we're living in, all I can really do is assume green, 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 red, 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 green, green, green. And that's kind of what I'm looking for. And I know I repeated that at the end, but again, what I'm basically looking for is get me over 2750. I'm then going to expect 29, and then we're going to expect continue all-time highs right now. It at least needs to be said that we can't lose 25. We cannot lose 25, all right? Feels hard to think that we will, but again, crazy things have happened in the market, right? And everything is possible, both up and down. So we cannot lose 25. This was a beautiful start to a 50 MA bounce. Again, these three individually are hard to break up, and they should be hard to lose down. So it makes sense that the 50 was strong, especially when we haven't touched it, remotely touched it since we broke it right here, right? And really, the last time we used it was in the beginning of the year, all right? The last thing I'm going to comment with is and it's like I said, I just saw this in the opening thought, so this is actually really fresh. We've been here before. We've made some nice takeoffs away from the 50. We then hit the 50, bounce up, and then eventually lose it. So watch for that, all right? If we bounce up and make our way up to 29, and then don't continue and then start to head back down, you got to start to wonder if we're going to do something like this early 2025 point, right? What did S&P 500 look like right there? Okay, the markets were significantly different right there, right? We were starting to hit the wall, and eventually like tariff stuff happened, right? And there were tariff fears looming and stuff like that, right? Because he just started to take he just got the election stuff. He just came into power. So I, in a lot of ways, think it's a little bit of a different market than it was right here, but it's at least worth noting. All right. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions, even if you disagree. Oh, I appreciate you all so, so much.